Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Liberation Lens podcast with David Alexander. I am your host, David Alexander, and this is episode 4. Episode 4. We're clicking right along. I want to take a pause as we begin here and thank all of my subscribers and listeners and followers on Substack. The community is growing. You may have seen my social media post first thanking the first 200 people that signed up to subscribe to the podcast, to the Substack, Liberation Lens. And we quickly surpassed that goal. And within 2 weeks, we crested the 300 mark. And I give a big shout out to Patricia Wagner for being number 300. You have a personalized autograph copy of my book, Freedom from Discord, on your way to you. I have a copy of that book to show up here. Yeah, I do. Here you go. For those watching online, if you're listening, you can pick up Freedom from Discord at Amazon, or you can share this Substack with somebody and let me know that you've done that, and I'll be happy to send you one. So Patricia Wagner's got one coming to her as number 300, and we're already over 320 subscribers. So we're growing fast, folks, and I am delighted. That would not be happening without you and your engagement, and it means so much to me. Some of those 300 are paid subscribers, and so thank you so much for those individuals who have taken that step, because you are providing some great support to me, some encouragement to carve out the time and space to do this work. So love what Substack is doing for us. So let's get to it. This is episode 4, and we are going through the 8 pillars of the Liberation Lens framework. You remember, number 1, consciousness is everything. Number 2, everyone is on the path. Number 3, that evolution is our nature. Wholeness is our design, right? That we are evolutionary creatures. And I gave you some graphics and some templates there to look at how we participate actively in our own conscious evolution. And number 4 is spiritual practice is the language of our growth. Spiritual practice is the language of our growth. What does that mean? Well, first, let's talk about spiritual practices in general, right? What are spiritual practices? Spiritual practices are the things that you do on a regular basis to enhance and grow your spiritual grounding, your conscious evolution, as number 3 would indicate, your connection to consciousness, as number 1 would indicate, right? It's that thing that keeps you on the path, as pillar 2 would indicate, right? So you see how these pillars build up on each other. Consciousness is everything. Everyone's on the path, which means everyone's got a language that, helps them on that path, consciously or unconsciously, right? We're all evolving, number 3. And number 4, spiritual practice is the language of our growth. So spiritual practice, if we're conscious of it, if we're awake and aware of it, then it allows us to be on that path in a more open evolutionary way. And so there's lots of ways to look at that. Spiritual practice is not about, checking a box or adhering to some rigid routine, even though it may be a rigid practice. It's about cultivating that ongoing relationship with the divine, with ourselves. It's about that unfolding process of life and how we communicate with it, right? Like an artist refining their craft or an athlete training their body, we become more and more of who we truly are and who we are meant to be by engaging in practices that help shape our consciousness, right? So reading, studying, prayer, meditation, these are all examples of spiritual practices. We might look at some of the more rigid or formalized ones that are part of other traditions, right? You might look at the Catechism or the 12 Stations of the Cross in Christianity, the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, As I'm recording this podcast, it is the beginning of Ramadan in the year 2025. And so in Ramadan, in Islam, they have the 5 pillars of Islam. Those are, geared towards keeping one on the path in a sacred way, not just in adherence to the religion, but in sacred relationship with the self and always growing and expanding, right? That's really the greater point. And so you might think of breath work and yoga and healthy eating, all can be forms of spiritual practices. In the tradition that I grew up in, religious science, New Thought, spirituality, there are kind of 5 core spiritual practices that I focus on. In the blog attached to this podcast episode, there is a worksheet that has those 5 on it and a way that you can kind of measure where you're at with those. And you can scratch out any one of those 5 and write in your own, right? You don't have to stick to those 5. So I really encourage you to download that worksheet and write in your own spiritual practices that work for you. And really do an assessment at this time. Where am I in relationship to my spiritual practices? In the journey of our personal transformation, spiritual practice serve as that language through which we communicate our deepest intention to facilitate our growth, right? It's not merely about the ritual, it's about cultivating that committed relationship with our higher self. So, the 5 that we focus on in the Liberation Lens, they are as follows: affirmations, affirmative prayer, meditation, forgiveness, and visioning. I'm going to go through each one of them again and say a little bit more about them. And probably at some point in the future, each one will be the focus of its own 10-minute podcast or what have these become? A little bit longer, 20 minutes, 30 minutes or less. How about that? Let's keep it real. It'll be 30. All of these are 30 minutes or less. That's the intention behind these podcast episodes. So affirmations. Let's begin at the beginning. Affirmations are just a really simple step, a simple way to declare in one sentence positive affirmations have sort of become ubiquitous. They're a part of the early founding of New Thought. They've been a practice in the tradition for a very long time, but they've become somewhat ubiquitous in the culture. You find them in positive psychology and in schools and therapy and counseling and all kinds of places. And affirmations are simply about harnessing the awareness that our words have immense power within them. And so affirmations are positive statements that, when spoken consistently, begin to reshape our consciousness, because we go back to principle 1, consciousness is everything, and the subconscious belief that's underneath it. So declaring things like, I am whole, complete, evolving in perfect time, all of my needs are met. We align our thoughts with that reality that we wish to manifest. This practice is transforming our internal dialogue, because our mind is constantly talking to us, and so we give it some positive things to repeat and to say, paving the way for external change to show up in our life, right? Lots more we could say about the power of affirmations and how they all work, but that's your basic overview. Number 2, affirmative prayer, building on the power of affirmations. Unlike traditional forms of prayer that may stem from a place of lack or pleading or beseeching, Father, help me, bargaining with the divine, affirmative prayer is a confident declaration of our oneness with the divine. And it's about recognizing that the solutions that we seek are already present in the midst of a universal consciousness that covers all. And so we affirm that truth. We shift. Prayer is not about changing external things. It's about shifting ourselves from the inside, from a place of faith and a place of assuredness that infinite possibilities await us. And so it's articulating that in a particular way that helps us shift our whole atmosphere of our consciousness. I feel better just talking about it, right? It was kind of a prayer in and of itself. Number 3 is meditation. It's just the art of deep listening, right? It's the art of getting still and taking a breath and being conscious, creating a space where we listen to the inner wisdom, to the whispers of the divine, center down and settle out of the noise of the outside world, whether it's for 30 seconds or 30 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever we can do to simply be still. And in that time, we allow the mind and the atmosphere of our entire consciousness to reset itself. Your cells will literally begin to regenerate and reorient themselves to a state of health and wholeness when we allow ourselves enough space to turn down the noise of the outside world. Yeah. And then forgiveness is number 4. And forgiveness is about releasing undue weight. You know, you take in your car. I have an electric car now, but when I had a internal combustion engine car, you'd have to take it in initially it was like every 3,000 miles, and then they got a little better, 5,000. Now most modern cars are sometimes around 10,000 miles or once a year. But nevertheless, you take them in. And why do you do that? To change the oil, to rotate the tires, to check the fluids. And the oil in particular, which helps the engine run, the pistons move, and all of the gears and things gets gunked up. It gets polluted and thick and dirty. And it needs to be cleaned out so that we can put fresh oil in that lubricates all the joints of the engine and works better, right? Forgiveness is kind of the spiritual metaphor of doing that. It's releasing the dead weight. It's releasing the expectations and demands that we have put on ourselves and on other people to show up the way that we need them to show up in order for us to be okay. Yeah, what if all the places where you have those demands, what if nobody ever shows up the way you need them to show up in order for you to be okay? What if they're just themselves, imperfect as they are? Then what are you going to do? You're going to hate them for the rest of your life? You're going to resent them for the rest of your life? You're going to hold it against them for the rest of your life? What does that do? It only hurts you. And so in forgiveness, we find the grace and the space to release that and return to a place of love. And the final practice that I want to share with you is the practice of visioning. Visioning is a practice of tuning into the divine blueprint for our lives. It is inspired by the work of Michael Beckwith and other New Thought luminaries along the way who have articulated as a profound, reflective, meditative practice that asks specific questions of that space. As we tap into the infinite mind, as we tap into an infinite intelligence, we know that we can then articulate any question that might be on our heart and receive an answer that is beyond our own brainstorming, beyond our own ego desires, that is really what spirit intends for us to know and to feel about something. And to do that on a regular basis puts us in a mode of surrendering our little self and getting into a bigger vision of what's possible for our lives. So those are the 5 affirmations: affirmative prayer, meditation, forgiveness, and visioning. And as I said, there are others: breath work, yoga, healthy eating, mindful eating, many others from other traditions. You can fill in the blank of your own, but find the 3, 4, 5, any number that you can be committed to, spiritual practices that help you articulate the language of your growth such that from year after year, month after month, you're able to measure the progress. Where am I in relationship to my vision, in relationship to my goals, and how am I going to get there? How am I going to move from where I am currently to where I want to be? I'm going to engage through a committed practice of these spiritual practices, right? So that's pillar 4, my friends. I hope you found that useful. Again, there's a really great guide to help get you started in the blog here, as well as resources for each of the 5 practices in their appropriate subheadings, books and other resources. So make yourself available to those. Let me know what your favorite practices are, if it's something that I didn't mention, and if there's a great resource like a book or an author or a teacher that has taught that to you and brings that to life. I would love to know it. Let's share. Let's create community here on the Substack and go with that. All right, my friends, we will be doing next week the next pillar, which is about belonging. There's a little preview for you. It is about belonging, number 5. But right now, that has been the review of number 4. Spiritual practice is the language of our growth. Wish you all a great and wonderful week, and I look forward to engaging with you here on the Substack channel. Bye for now. Peace and blessings.